The phone rang 3 times before a woman's voice answered. Soft, familiar, wrong. Lucian's busy right now, her sister purred from his penthouse, and Elena's world shattered. 6 years of marriage, 6 years of loyalty, and the baby boy growing inside her, all of it turned to ash in that single moment. She ran that night, disappeared into nothing, and raised their son alone in a town where no one asked questions. But Lucian Vale doesn't lose what belongs to him. And when he finally finds her, when he sees the child she hid from him, the truth, waiting in the shadows, will destroy everything they thought they knew. If you're hooked, stay with me until the end. And if this story grabs you, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Elena and Lucien's story travels. The clinic smelled like antiseptic and false hope, the kind of place where futures got decided in 15-minute appointments. Elena Marrow sat on the examination table, paper crinkling beneath her, hands folded over her stomach like she was already protecting what lived inside. The doctor, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and tired hands, smiled as she pulled up the ultrasound image on the screen. "Congratulations, Mrs. Vale. You're having a boy." The words landed soft, but they detonated something fierce in Elena's chest. A boy. A son. She'd suspected for weeks, felt it in the way her body changed, the exhaustion that clung to her like a second skin. But hearing it made real. That was different. That was everything. "You're sure?" Elena's voice came out smaller than she intended. "Completely. Healthy heartbeat, good measurements. He's perfect." The doctor handed her a printout, a grainy black and white image that looked more like abstract art than a child, but Elena stared at it like it held the secrets of the universe. Perfect. Their son was perfect. She thanked the doctor, gathered her things, and walked out into the Los Angeles afternoon with the ultrasound picture pressed against her heart. The sun was too bright, the traffic too loud, the whole city humming with life while hers tilted on its axis. She needed to tell Lucien, right now, before anyone else, before the news became real in any way that didn't include him first. Her husband, the man who'd pulled her from obscurity 6 years ago, who'd seen something in a struggling art student that no one else had bothered to notice. Lucien Vale, feared, powerful, untouchable, had chosen her, married her, built a life with her that existed in the shadows of his empire. Yes, but a life nonetheless. She'd learned not to ask too many questions about his business, learned to accept the security details and the late-night phone calls, and the way men looked at him with equal parts respect and terror. That was the bargain. That was the price. But this baby, this boy, this was theirs. Something clean and good that had nothing to do with the blood on his hands or the weight of his name. Elena pulled out her phone as she walked to the car, scrolling to Lucien's private number, not the business line, not the one that went through his assistant or got screened by layers of security, the one that rang directly to him, the one only she had, the one he'd promised would always be answered when she called. She hit dial. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a woman picked up. "Hello?" Elena's steps faltered. She pulled the phone away from her ear, checked the screen to make sure she'd dialed correctly. She had. Lucien's name stared back at her, bold and certain. "Hello," the woman said again, and this time Elena's brain caught up to what her body already knew. That voice. She knew that voice. "Serena?" The name came out strangled. A pause. Then, light and easy, like they were discussing lunch plans. "Oh, Elena. Hi. Why are you—" Elena couldn't finish the sentence. "Why are you answering my husband's private phone?" The words jammed in her throat, too sharp and jagged to force out. "Lucien's a little busy right now." Serena's tone was sugar over glass. "Can I take a message?" The world didn't stop spinning. It lurched, violent and wrong, like someone had grabbed the edges and yanked hard. Elena stood frozen on the sidewalk, people streaming past her, car horns blaring, and all of it felt distant, muffled, like she was underwater. "Busy," Elena repeated. The word tasted like poison. "Yeah." Serena sighed, theatrical, almost bored. "You know how he gets. But I'll tell him you called. Where are you?" "What?" "Where are you?" Elena's voice cracked on the last word. Another pause, longer this time. When Serena spoke again, the sweetness was gone. At the penthouse. Where else would I be? At the penthouse. Lucian's penthouse. The one Elena had left this morning after kissing him goodbye, after he'd promised to be home for dinner, after he'd pulled her close and told her he loved her in that low, rough voice he only used when they were alone, the one her sister had no business being in. Put him on, Elena said. Her hands were shaking so hard she almost dropped the phone. I told you he's... Put him on. Serena laughed, actually laughed. Elena, you're being dramatic. I'm just helping him with some... Elena hung up. The click felt final, like cutting a cord. She stood there, phone clutched in one hand, ultrasound picture in the other, and tried to breathe through the thing, clawing up her chest. Serena, her sister, the one who'd always been beautiful, where Elena was plain, confident where Elena was quiet, ambitious where Elena was content. The one who'd smiled at their wedding and told Elena she was so lucky, who'd visited their home and admired their life and asked 1,000 questions about Lucian's work, his schedule, his world. The one who was now answering his private phone from his penthouse in the middle of the afternoon. Elena's mind spun through possibilities, explanations, anything that would make this make sense. Maybe it was business. Maybe Serena had stopped by to drop something off, found Lucian's phone, answered it by mistake. Maybe... But the tone in her voice, the ease, the way she'd said, where else would I be, like it was obvious, like it was natural, like she belonged there. Elena got in her car. She didn't remember driving, didn't remember the route, but 20 minutes later she was pulling up to the building that housed Lucian's penthouse. The doorman recognized her. Of course he did. She was Lucian's wife, and waved her through without question. The elevator ride up felt like descending into hell. She used her key on the penthouse door. It swung open quietly, expensively, into the sprawling space that had never quite felt like home. Too modern, too cold. Too much a reflection of Lucian's world, and not enough of hers. She'd always preferred their actual home, the house in the hills with the garden and the warmth. This place was where he worked, where he met with people she didn't ask about, where he kept the pieces of his life she'd agreed not to touch. The living room was empty. No Lucian, no Serena. But she could hear voices, low and indistinct, coming from deeper in the penthouse. Elena moved toward them. Her heels clicked on the marble floor, too loud, but she didn't care. She passed the kitchen, the dining room, walked down the hall toward Lucian's office. The door was cracked open. I have to tell her eventually, Serena was saying. Her voice floated out, casual, almost amused. Not yet. Lucian's voice. Hard, final. Elena's hand went to the door frame. She should announce herself. Should push the door open and demand answers. But something kept her frozen there, listening. She's going to find out, Serena said. You can't keep this from her forever. I'll handle it. Will you? Because from where I'm standing, you're already in too deep. A sound, papers rustling maybe, or Lucian moving across the room. This isn't your concern. Isn't it? Serena's voice shifted, went softer. Lucian, I'm just trying to help. You know that, right? I care about what happens to you. Silence. Long enough that Elena's heart started to crack. I know, Lucian said finally. Quiet. Almost gentle. That was when Elena pushed the door open. They both turned. Lucian stood behind his desk, dressed in the same suit he'd worn that morning, looking every inch the man who ruled an empire from the shadows. And Serena. Serena stood close, too close, one hand resting on the desk between them like she had every right to be there. Her sister looked perfect. She always did. Dark hair swept back, dress that probably cost more than Elena made in a month before she'd married Lucian, makeup flawless. She looked like she belonged in this world of power and danger and expensive things. She looked like she belonged with him. Elena. Lucian's expression shifted, surprise flickering across his features before settling into something guarded. I didn't know you were coming by. Clearly. Elena's voice came out steadier than she felt. She looked at Serena. What are you doing here? Serena smiled. Lucian and I were just discussing some business. Business. Elena tasted the word, found it bitter. What kind of business would my husband have with my sister? Elena, Lucian started, but she cut him off. No, I want her to answer. Serena's smile didn't falter. Investment opportunities. Lucien's been advising me on some properties I'm looking at. A lie. Elena knew it was a lie the way you know the difference between thunder and something breaking. But before she could call it, Lucien spoke. We're done here, Serena. I'll have my people send over the information. It was a dismissal, clear and absolute. But Serena took her time, gathering her purse, her jacket, moving toward the door with the kind of grace that made Elena feel clumsy just watching. When she reached Elena, she paused, leaned in like she was going to kiss her cheek. Instead, she whispered just loud enough for Elena to hear, "You should ask him about the offshore accounts." Then she was gone, heels clicking down the hall, the penthouse door opening and closing with a soft final sound. Elena stood there, that whisper echoing in her skull. Offshore accounts. What offshore accounts? What was she talking about? Elena turned to Lucien. He'd moved around the desk, was walking toward her with his hand slightly raised, like she was something skittish that might bolt. She's trying to stir up trouble. You know how she is. How she is? Elena's voice rose. How she is? Lucien, she answered your private phone, the one that's supposed to be just for me. And when I called, she was here, in your penthouse, talking about things you're keeping from me. I'm not keeping anything from you. Then what were you discussing? What can't you tell me yet? What are you in too deep with? Lucien's jaw tightened. Business, that's all. Don't. The word came out sharp. Don't treat me like I'm stupid. Don't treat me like I'm one of your employees you can just order around and expect blind loyalty. I have never treated you like that. Then tell me the truth. She was shaking now, the ultrasound picture still clutched in her hand, crumpling under her grip. Tell me why my sister is answering your phone and standing in your office and whispering about offshore accounts like she knows more about your life than I do. Lucien's expression shuddered. It was a look she'd seen before, the one he wore when someone pushed too hard, asked too much, got too close to things he'd decided to keep locked down. Elena, you need to trust me. I do trust you. I have trusted you. For 6 years I've trusted you, and I've never asked questions I knew you didn't want to answer, and I've lived in this world you've built even though half the time I don't understand it, and the other half, it terrifies me. Her voice broke. But this, I can't just ignore this. There's nothing to ignore. Serena came to me asking for business advice. I gave it, that's all. Then why did she have your phone? I don't know. Maybe I left it on the desk and she picked it up without thinking. Without thinking? Elena laughed, sharp and humorless. Serena doesn't do anything without thinking. Everything she does is calculated. You're being paranoid. The word landed like a slap. Elena stepped back, stared at him. I'm being paranoid? I call my husband's private number to tell him something important, and another woman answers, my own sister, and I'm paranoid for thinking something's wrong? Lucien's eyes narrowed. What did you need to tell me? She looked down at the ultrasound picture in her hand. The edges were torn now, wrinkled from how hard she'd been gripping it. Their son. The news she'd been so desperate to share, the joy that had filled her chest just an hour ago. Now it felt like ashes. Nothing, she said quietly. It doesn't matter. Elena, I need to go. She turned, started walking. Lucien called after her, but she didn't stop. Didn't look back. Just kept moving until she was in the elevator, until the doors closed, until she was alone with her reflection in the polished metal and the truth she didn't want to face. Her sister had answered her husband's phone. Her sister was in his penthouse, in his office, in his life. Her sister knew things Elena didn't. Her sister had whispered about secrets like she was the keeper of them. And Lucien had defended her, had told Elena she was paranoid, had shut down instead of opening up. The elevator doors opened. Elena walked through the lobby, past the doorman, out into the Los Angeles afternoon that felt different now, wrong, like the whole city had shifted while she was upstairs having her marriage dismantled piece by piece. She got in her car, drove, didn't know where she was going until she pulled up outside their house, the real one, the one she'd decorated and filled with life and thought of as home. Inside, everything looked the same, the art on the walls, the books on the shelves, the pictures of them together, smiling, happy, in love. But it was all a lie, wasn't it? It had to be. Elena went upstairs to their bedroom. Lucien's side of the closet was full of expensive suits, custom shirts, shoes that cost more than some people's cars. She started pulling things out, looking for what? Evidence? Proof? Something that would confirm what her gut was screaming at her? She found it in the pocket of a jacket he rarely wore. A receipt, dated 3 weeks ago. Tiffany and Company, $47,000. Elena's hands went numb. She'd gotten nothing from Tiffany's 3 weeks ago. It wasn't her birthday, wasn't their anniversary. She turned the receipt over, looking for more information, and found a notation in Lucien's handwriting. S, as discussed. S, Serena. The room tilted. Elena sat down hard on the edge of the bed, receipt trembling in her fingers. $47,000. As discussed. Like it was planned. Like it was expected. Like it was for someone who mattered. Her phone buzzed. A text from Lucien. "Where are you? We need to talk." She stared at the words until they blurred. Then she pulled up her contacts, scrolled to Serena's name, hit dial before she could think better of it. Serena answered on the first ring. "I was wondering when you'd call back." "The Tiffany receipt," Elena said. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, distant and cold. "What did he buy you?" A pause. Then Serena laughed, soft and pitying. "Oh, Elena, you really don't know, do you?" "Know what?" "He's leaving you. He's been planning it for months. The offshore accounts, the gifts, all of it. He's getting ready to move on. And he asked me to help because, well," another laugh, "because he knew I'd understand. I've always understood him better than you have." The words should have hurt, should have cut deep. But Elena had gone past pain into something colder, something that felt like clarity. "You're lying," she said. "Am I? Then why hasn't he told you about the penthouse in Monaco? Or the accounts in the Caymans? Or the fact that he's been meeting with divorce attorneys for the past month?" Elena's free hand moved to her stomach, pressed against the life growing there. Their son. The boy Lucien didn't know existed. "Ask him," Serena continued. "Ask him about any of it. See what he says. See if he can look you in the eye and tell you I'm lying." The line went dead. Elena sat there in the bedroom she'd shared with Lucien for 6 years, surrounded by the life they'd built, and felt it all crumble to dust. Maybe Serena was lying. Maybe this was some sick game, some play for power or money, or whatever it was Serena had always wanted and never gotten. But the receipt was real. The offshore accounts Serena mentioned, Lucien hadn't denied them, and the look on his face in the office, the way he'd shut down when she pushed, the way he'd called her paranoid instead of proving her wrong. Her phone buzzed again. Lucien calling now. She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled out a suitcase and started packing. Not everything, just enough. Clothes, toiletries. The ultrasound picture, carefully smoothed out and tucked into her wallet. Some cash she'd been saving, money Lucien didn't know about because there was a part of her, a small, scared part she'd never fully silenced, that had always wondered if someday she'd need an escape plan. She packed like someone running from a burning building, quick and efficient, and trying not to think about what she was leaving behind. When Lucien came home an hour later, calling her name, searching the house, Elena was already gone. She'd walked out the back, climbed into the car she'd registered under her maiden name, and driven until the house was a memory and Los Angeles was shrinking in her rearview mirror. She had no destination, no plan beyond getting away, getting safe, getting somewhere Lucien's reach couldn't find her. Because if Serena was telling the truth, if Lucien really was planning to leave her, if he really had been keeping secrets and moving money and preparing for a life that didn't include her, then staying would destroy her. And if Serena was lying, if this was all manipulation and games and twisted jealousy, then Lucien had still chosen to let Serena into their life, into his office, onto his phone, into whatever web of secrets he'd been weaving. Either way, Elena couldn't stay. Either way, she was already gone. She drove north through the night, through cities that blurred into highway, through rest stops where she closed her eyes and tried not to see Lucien's face. Tried not to remember the way he'd looked at her on their wedding day, or the promises he'd made, or the life she'd thought they were building. By the time the sun rose, she'd crossed into Oregon. By the time it set again, she was in Washington. And when she finally stopped, when she couldn't drive anymore, and the exhaustion was making her hands shake on the wheel, she pulled into a small coastal town called Mercy Bay. Population 8,000. Tourist destination in summer, dead quiet in fall. The kind of place where you could disappear if you needed to, if you were desperate enough. Elena checked into a motel using cash and a fake name. Sarah Mitchell, she told the clerk, and he didn't blink, didn't question, just handed over a key and pointed her toward room 12. Inside, she locked the door, set down her suitcase, sat on the edge of the bed, and finally let herself break. She cried for the marriage she'd believed in, for the man she'd loved, for the sister who'd betrayed her, for the family she'd thought she was building and the future that had turned to smoke. And she cried for the baby growing inside her, the boy who would never know his father, who would grow up with half his history missing because Elena wouldn't go back. When the tears ran out, she pulled out the ultrasound picture one more time, studied the grainy image of her son. "It's just us now," she whispered, "but I'll keep you safe, I promise, no matter what it takes." In Los Angeles, Lucian Vale tore his house apart looking for his wife. Called every number she had, activated every contact in his network, sent men to check hospitals, hotels, her friends' houses, anywhere she might have gone. But Elena had learned well from 6 years of watching how he moved through the world. She'd learned how to disappear, how to leave no trace. And as Lucian stood in their empty bedroom, staring at the space where her clothes had been, he had no idea that his wife was carrying his son, had no idea that the life he'd built was about to become 6 years of searching for something he'd lost the moment he let Serena answer that phone. No idea that the truth, when it finally came, would destroy them both. The first winter in a Mercy Bay nearly killed her. Not literally, though there were nights Elena thought about walking into the ocean and just letting the cold take her, but in the way it stripped everything down to survival. The motel room became too expensive after 2 weeks. She found a studio apartment above a bait shop that smelled like fish guts in desperation, paid 3 months up front with the cash she had left, and tried to figure out how to become someone else. Sarah Mitchell, that's who she was now. No history, no husband, no sister who'd burned her life down with a smile and a whispered secret. Just a woman alone, pregnant, running out of money in a town that barely noticed her. The baby, Nico, she'd started calling him in her head, though she didn't know why that name felt right, grew inside her while the world outside turned gray and cold. Elena took a job waitressing at a diner called The Anchor, the kind of place that served coffee so bad it could strip paint and didn't ask questions when you put a fake social security number on the application. The owner, Dale, was 70 and half-deaf and paid her under the table without blinking. "You're good with people," he told her after her first week. "Don't smile much, but you're good." She didn't tell him she'd forgotten how to smile. Didn't tell him about the night she woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there, or the way she still checked her phone for messages from a number she'd blocked, or how sometimes she stood in the shower and cried so hard she thought her ribs might crack. The other waitress, a woman named Jody with bleached hair and a smoker's rasp, cornered her one afternoon during the slow stretch between lunch and dinner. "So what's your story?" Jody asked, lighting a cigarette despite the no-smoking sign Dale had posted and ignored for decades. "Don't have one," Elena said. "Bullshit. Everyone's got a story, especially the ones who end up here looking like they're hiding from something." Elena met her eyes. "Maybe I just like the ocean." Jody snorted. "Yeah, and I'm Miss America." She took a drag, blew smoke toward the ceiling. "Look, I don't care what you're running from. Half this town's running from something. But word of advice? Get your story straight before someone asks who can actually do something about it." "Like who?" "Like anyone with a computer and too much time." Jody stubbed out the cigarette. "Small towns talk, honey. Right now you're new and interesting. Give it a month and they'll get bored. But until then, keep your head down and your lies simple." It was the best advice Elena got those first months. She kept her head down, worked her shifts, saved every dollar she could while her stomach swelled and her back ached and the fear of being found wrapped around her throat like a noose. Because Lucien was looking. She knew he was looking. A man like him didn't lose things, didn't accept defeat, didn't stop until he'd torn apart the world to find what belonged to him. And she had belonged to him, had taken his name, worn his ring, slept in his bed, and believed his promises. She just didn't know if he was looking because he loved her or because she'd had the audacity to leave. 3 months in, Her phone, the new one she'd bought with cash at a truck stop, the one with a number no one knew, buzzed with a news alert. She almost ignored it, almost deleted the app entirely because staying connected to the world she'd fled felt dangerous. But she looked, and there he was. The photo was from some charity gala in Los Angeles, the kind of event where power brokers wore tuxedos and pretended their money was clean. Lucien stood in the center of a group of men in suits, looking every inch the legitimate businessman he pretended to be in public. Sharp jaw, dark eyes, the kind of face that made people shut up when he walked into a room. And next to him, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Elena made in 6 months, was Serena. Her sister's hand rested on Lucian's arm, possessive, casual, like it belonged there. The caption read, "Lucien Vale and companion at the Children's Hospital Foundation Gala." Companion. Elena stared at that word until her vision blurred. Then she threw the phone across the room hard enough that it cracked against the wall and shattered. Jody found her in this bathroom 20 minutes later, sitting on the floor with her knees pulled up as far as her belly would allow, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. "Jesus Christ," Jody muttered. She sat down next to Elena, didn't ask permission, just pulled her close like they were friends instead of co-workers who barely knew each other. "What happened?" "Nothing." "Try again." Elena's throat worked. "I saw a picture." "Of?" "Someone I used to know." Jody was quiet for a moment. Then, "The baby's father?" Elena's hands went to her stomach instinctively, protective. "No." "You're a terrible liar. You know that?" "He doesn't know." The words came out broken. "About the baby? He doesn't know, and I can't. I won't, okay?" Jody cut her off. "Okay. You don't have to explain. But honey, whatever you're running from, whatever put that look on your face, you got to deal with it before this kid comes. Because babies don't care about your damage. They just need you whole enough to take care of them." Elena wiped her eyes. "I don't know how to be whole." "Then you learn, day by day, minute by minute if that's what it takes." Jody stood, offered her hand. "Come on. Dale's going to wonder where we went, and I don't feel like getting lectured about bathroom breaks again." Elena took her hand and let herself be pulled up. Let herself pretend that was enough, that working shifts and saving money and building a life out of nothing in a town that didn't care who she used to be would somehow make her whole. But at night, alone in her apartment with the smell of fish and salt water seeping through the walls, she knew better. Knew she was just hiding, just surviving, just waiting for the hammer to fall. Nico was born on a Tuesday in April, 6 pounds and furious about it. Elena labored alone in the county hospital. No family, no friends, no one to hold her hand or tell her she was doing fine. Just nurses who'd seen it all before, and a doctor who delivered the baby with efficient detachment and left her alone with a squirming, red-faced infant who looked nothing like her and everything like his father. She cried when they placed him in her arms. Cried because he was perfect and terrible and hers and not hers all at once. Cried because Lucien should have been there, should have seen his son take his first breath, should have known he had a child in the world who carried his blood, his face, his legacy. But Lucien had made his choice, and Elena had made hers. "What are you naming him?" the nurse asked, clipboard ready. Elena looked down at her son, at the dark hair already thick on his head, at the eyes that would probably turn brown like Lucian's, at the tiny hands that gripped her finger with surprising strength. "Nico," she said. "Nico Mitchell. Not Vale. Never Vale." That name belonged to a life she'd burned to ash. The first year was chaos. Nico cried like he was trying to wake the dead, slept in 20-minute increments, and turned Elena's world into a blur of diapers and feedings and exhaustion so deep she sometimes forgot her own name. She went back to work at the Anchor when he was 6 weeks old, strapped him into a carrier and brought him with her because she couldn't afford childcare, and Dale didn't care as long as the coffee got poured. "Kid's got lungs," Dale observed one afternoon when Nico wailed through the lunch rush. "Yeah," Elena said, bouncing him while she balanced a tray of food. "He's persistent. Like his mom." She didn't correct him. Didn't say that persistence was just fear dressed up in action, that every day she woke up terrified this would be the day Lucien found them, that she checked the news obsessively for any mention of his name or Serena's face or the empire she'd fled. But the days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and no one came. No black SUVs rolled into Mercy Bay. No men in expensive suits asked questions at the anchor. No one looked at Nico and saw Lucian's features stamped on an infant face. She started to breathe a little easier, started to believe maybe, she'd actually gotten away. That belief lasted until Nico turned 2. Elena was walking home from the grocery store, Nico strapped to her back in a carrier he was getting too big for, when she saw the car. Black sedan, tinted windows. Out of place in a town where most people drove pickup trucks held together with rust and prayer. It was parked across from her apartment building, engine running. Elena's blood went cold. She kept walking, didn't look directly at it, tried to seem casual while her heart hammered against her ribs. Probably nothing. Probably tourists who got lost. Probably. The car pulled away from the curb, drove slowly down the street, turned the corner, and disappeared. Elena stood frozen on the sidewalk, grocery bags cutting into her palms. Nico babbling happily behind her about a dog he'd seen. "Mama, doggy," he said. "Big doggy?" "I saw, baby." Her voice came out steady, practiced. She'd gotten good at lying, at pretending everything was fine when her world was tilting sideways. She took the long way home, circled the block twice, watching for the sedan, for anyone following, for anything that felt wrong. By the time she climbed the stairs to her apartment, she'd almost convinced herself she was being paranoid. Almost. She triple-checked the locks that night, kept the lights off, watched the street from behind the curtain while Nico slept in the small bedroom that barely fit his crib and a dresser. The sedan didn't come back. But 2 days later, a man showed up at the anchor. He didn't look like Lucian's people. Too casual, flannel shirt, jeans, work boots caked with mud. He could have been any fisherman or logger or construction worker who passed through Mercy Bay. Except his eyes were too sharp, too observing. And when Elena brought him coffee, he watched her like he was cataloging her features. "Thanks," he said. His voice was rough, unremarkable. "Let me know if you need anything else." She started to turn away. "Actually, I'm looking for someone. Maybe you can help." Elena's hand tightened on the coffee pot. "I can try." Woman, late 20s, might go by Elena, or maybe Sarah. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Dark hair, pretty, might have come through here a couple years back. The coffee pot nearly slipped from her grip. She caught it, forced her face into neutral. "Doesn't ring a bell. This is a small town, but we get tourists in the summer. Hard to remember everyone." She'd be memorable, probably pregnant when she arrived. "Sorry." Elena met his eyes, held them. "Can't help you." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Thanks anyway." He left a 20 for a $4 cup of coffee and walked out. Elena made it to the bathroom before her legs gave out. She sat on the toilet lid, shaking, trying to breathe through the panic clawing up her throat. He knew. Someone knew. Someone was looking, asking questions, getting too close. She had to move, had to run again, had to... "You okay?" Jody's voice cut through the spiral. Elena looked up. "Yeah, fine." "Liar." Jody leaned against the sink. "Who was that guy?" "No one. He left you a 20 for shitty coffee, and you're in here looking like you've seen a ghost. That's not no one." Elena's mind raced. She could trust Jody. Had to trust someone. Or she could keep lying, keep running, keep dragging Nico from place to place until, what? Until Lucian gave up? Until Serena got bored? Until the fear stopped choking her every time a stranger looked too long? "I need to leave," she said. The words felt like surrender. "Because of that guy. Because I can't stay anywhere too long. Because eventually someone finds me and I have to start over." Elena stood, smoothed her apron with shaking hands. "I'm sorry. I should have told you. Should have..." "How long you got?" Jody asked. "What?" "Before whoever's looking for you gets too close. How long?" Elena blinked. "I don't know. Days? Maybe a week if I'm lucky." Jody nodded slowly. "Then we've got time. Come to my place after your shift. Bring the kid. We'll figure this out." "Why would you help me?" "Because I've been where you are. Different reasons, different man, but same scared, shitless feeling." Jody pushed off the sink. And because that baby of yours deserves better than a mom who's always looking over her shoulder. That night, sitting in Jody's trailer with Nico asleep on the couch and a plan taking shape between them, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years. Hope. Not the desperate, clinging kind. Not the naive belief that everything would work out. But the quiet, stubborn kind that said, maybe she could do this. Could build a life. Could keep Nico safe. Could stop running long enough to breathe. Jody had a cousin in Seattle who ran a diner. He needed waitresses, didn't ask questions, paid cash. Elena could work there, find a place to live, enroll Nico in daycare when he was old enough, build something real instead of just hiding. It's not perfect, Jody said. Seattle's bigger, which means easier to disappear, but it also means more people, more chances someone might recognize you. I'll take that risk. Elena looked at Nico, sprawled out in toddler sleep, one arm flung over his head. I have to. They left Mercy Bay 3 days later. Early morning, before the sun came up, everything they owned packed into Elena's aging Honda. Jody stood in her doorway and watched them go, cigarette glowing in the pre-dawn dark. You call me if you need anything, she'd said the night before. And I mean anything. Someone comes asking, I'll send them in the wrong direction. Thank you. Elena had hugged her, this woman who'd become the closest thing to a friend she'd had in years. For everything. Just take care of that kid and yourself while you're at it. Seattle was bigger, louder, easier to get lost in. Elena, Sarah, she reminded herself constantly. She was Sarah Mitchell now and forever, found work at Jody's cousin's diner, found a one-bedroom apartment in a building that had seen better decades, found a rhythm that almost felt like living instead of just surviving. Nico started preschool at 3. He was bright, curious, talked constantly about dinosaurs and trucks and why the sky was blue. He had Lucienne's eyes, dark and intense, even on a child's face, but Elena's smile. The few times he smiled, anyway, he was serious for a kid his age, watchful, like he'd picked up on his mother's fear and made it his own. Is my dad coming for my birthday? He asked one night, a few weeks before he turned 4. Elena's hands stilled on the dishes she was washing. What? My dad. Is he coming? Nico sat at their small kitchen table, coloring a picture with the fierce concentration he brought to everything. Tyler's dad is coming to his birthday, and Mason's. So is mine coming? She'd known this conversation would come eventually, had practiced answers in her head, tried to prepare for the questions that would inevitably follow. But hearing it from Nico's mouth, so innocent and hopeful, still felt like a knife between her ribs. Your dad can't come, baby. She dried her hands, sat down next to him. He's far away. How far? Very far. Does he know about me? Elena's throat closed. No. Nico looked up from his coloring. Why not? It's complicated. That's what you always say when you don't want to tell me stuff. He went back to his drawing, scrubbing the red crayon so hard it broke. I don't care anyway. I don't need a dad. But he did care. Elena could see it in the way he watched other kids with their fathers at the park, in the way he got quiet when other kids talked about their dads, in the way he sometimes asked questions about Lucien, where he was, what he looked like, why he wasn't here, and then pretended not to care when Elena gave him half-truths and deflections. She was failing him. She knew it, but she didn't know how to fix it without risking everything. The years passed in a blur of work and school pickups and trying to build a normal life out of fragments. Nico turned 5, then 6, started kindergarten, made friends, asked fewer questions about his father and more about why they didn't have any other family, why there were no grandparents or aunts or uncles at his school events. It's just us, Elena told him, over and over, like a mantra. But we're enough. We're going to be okay. She almost believed it. Then Nico came home from first grade with a black eye and bloody knuckles. What happened? Elena dropped to her knees in front of him, checking his face, his hands, panic spiking through her. Nothing. Nico, tell me. He pulled away, jaw set in that stubborn way he had. So much like Lucien, it made her chest ache. Some kid said I didn't have a dad because my dad didn't want me. So I hit him. Oh, baby. I'm not a baby. His voice cracked. And it's not fair. Everyone else has dads and I don't, and you won't tell me why. You won't tell me anything. That's not true. It is. He was crying now, angry tears that he scrubbed away with his sleeve. You never talk about him. You don't have pictures, you don't even say his name. It's like he doesn't exist, like I don't exist. Elena reached for him, but he stepped back, shaking his head. I hate this, he said. I hate not knowing. I hate you for not telling me. He ran to his room and slammed the door. Elena sat on the floor of their small apartment, listening to her son cry, and knew she couldn't keep doing this. Couldn't keep running from the past while it poisoned the present. Couldn't keep lying to Nico about who he was, where he came from, why his father wasn't there. But telling him the truth meant risking everything. Meant admitting that his father was a dangerous man, that his mother had run because she'd believed a lie, that the whole foundation of their life was built on fear and deception. She didn't know which was worse, the lies or the truth. That night, after Nico had cried himself to sleep, and Elena had sat on the edge of his bed watching him breathe, she did something she hadn't done in 6 years. She searched Lucien's name online. The internet exploded with information, business deals, charity events, real estate acquisitions that probably laundered more money than Elena wanted to think about. And in almost every photo from the past 3 years, there she was. Serena. Not as a companion anymore, as something more. The articles were vague. Longtime associate, trusted advisor, close friend. But the photos told a different story. The way she stood next to him. The way his hand sometimes rested on the small of her back. The way they looked at charity galas and business dinners and high society events like they belonged together. Like Elena had never existed. She scrolled through image after image, feeling something inside her calcify into cold certainty. She'd been right to run, right to hide, right to keep Nico away from a man who'd replaced her so easily, who'd moved on while she'd spent 6 years looking over her shoulder and building a life out of scraps. Then she found the video. It was from a news segment about a hospital opening Lucien had funded. The reporter was talking about his generous donation, his commitment to the community, and there he was, standing in front of the new children's wing, cutting a ribbon, smiling that controlled smile he used for cameras. But he looked wrong. Thinner. Older. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, a hardness to his jaw that spoke of clenched teeth and sleepless nights. The reporter asked him something about future projects. I'm committed to several initiatives, Lucien said, his voice doing something strange to Elena's chest. But my primary focus remains personal. There's something I lost that I intend to find. Can you elaborate? No. The interview ended abruptly. The reporter stumbled through a closing statement while Lucien walked away, Serena trailing after him. Elena played it again, and again listened to those words, something I lost that I intend to find, and tried to parse them, tried to figure out if he meant her, if after 6 years he was still looking, still searching, or if it was just words. Just another lie from a man who'd let her sister answer his phone and destroy their marriage. She closed the laptop, sat in the dark, tried to quiet the part of her that wanted to believe he'd meant it, that wanted to believe he'd never stopped looking, that wanted to go back and demand the truth and fix what Serena had broken. But wanting didn't change facts, didn't erase the receipt or the offshore accounts or the way he'd called her paranoid instead of fighting for her belief. Didn't bring back 6 years of Nico's life that Lucien had missed. Some things, once broken, stayed broken. 3 weeks later, a man approached her outside the diner after her shift. He was young, clean-cut, wearing a suit that was too expensive for the neighborhood and an expression that was all business. Sarah Mitchell? He asked, every muscle in Elena's body locked. Who's asking? My name is Marcus Webb. I'm a private investigator. He pulled out a card, offered it to her. I've been hired to find someone. Elena Vale. I believe that's you. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. I don't know who that is. Ma'am, I've been doing this a long time. I know when someone's hiding. His voice wasn't unkind. And I know you have a son, Nico, 6 years old. Elena's vision tunneled. Don't! I'm not here to hurt you, or him. I'm just here to relay a message. From who? Lucien Vale. Marcus pulled out a phone, showed her a photo. Lucien, looking like he hadn't slept in days, staring at the camera with an expression Elena couldn't read. He wants to talk, that's all. Just talk. No. He said you'd say that, so he asked me to give you this. Marcus held out an envelope. Elena didn't take it. I don't want anything from him. It's not money, it's evidence, I guess, of what really happened 6 years ago. He said you deserve to know the truth before you make any decisions. I know the truth. Do you? Marcus's expression shifted, became something almost pitying. Because from where I'm standing, you've been running from a lie for 6 years, and your son is paying the price. The words hit like a physical blow. Elena grabbed the envelope, shoved it in her bag. Tell him to stop looking. Tell him we're fine without him. Tell him, I can't tell him anything you don't say to his face. Marcus stepped back. But I'll give you space to read that. My number's on the card if you want to talk. He walked away, leaving Elena standing on the sidewalk with an envelope that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She didn't open it that night, or the next. Kept it in her bag like something toxic, something that might explode if handled wrong. But it was there, always there, a weight she couldn't escape. Finally, a week later, after Nico had gone to bed, and the apartment was quiet except for the sound of Seattle rain against the windows, she opened it. Inside were documents, photos, phone records, security footage stills, and a letter in Lucian's handwriting. Elena, if you're reading this, Marcus found you. I'm sorry for that. Sorry for invading the life you built. But I can't stop. I've never stopped. 6 years ago, you disappeared. I've spent every day since trying to understand why, trying to find you, trying to fix whatever I broke. I don't know what Serena told you. I don't know what you think happened, but I'm enclosing proof of what actually did. Look at it, read it, then decide if I'm still the enemy. I never stopped loving you. L. Elena's hand shook as she went through the evidence. Saw the security footage of Serena entering Lucian's penthouse with a stolen key. Saw the phone records showing she'd blocked Elena's number from his phone, rerouted calls, intercepted messages. Saw the financial documents proving the Tiffany receipt was for a bracelet Serena had bought herself using a corporate card she'd stolen. Saw the truth. 6 years of truth she'd run from. 6 years of lies she'd believed. 6 years of a life built on Serena's manipulation and Elena's fear. She read until dawn. Until the evidence blurred and her tears dried and there was nothing left but the cold, hard understanding that she'd been wrong. About everything. The phone records were the worst part. Page after page of calls from Lucian's number to hers that she'd never received. Voicemails that had been deleted before they reached her. Text messages rerouted, blocked, erased. All of it Serena's work. All of it calculated to make Elena believe she'd been abandoned while Lucian thought she'd simply vanished. Elena sat at her kitchen table as morning light crept through the windows, surrounded by evidence of a betrayal so complete it had cost them 6 years. 6 years of Lucian searching, 6 years of her running, 6 years of Nico growing up without a father because Serena had wanted what wasn't hers and was willing to destroy everything to take it. The rage came first, hot and vicious, making her hands shake and her vision blur. She wanted to break things. Wanted to drive to Los Angeles and put her hands around Serena's throat and demand to know why. Why their marriage? Why Lucienne? Why go to such lengths to ruin 2 people who'd never done anything to her except exist? But rage burned itself out quickly, left behind something colder. Grief. For the time they'd lost. For the life they could have had. For Nico, who should have known his father from birth instead of growing up with a hole in his chest shaped like questions Elena couldn't answer. She was still sitting there staring at the letter in Lucian's handwriting when Nico padded out of his bedroom in his dinosaur pajamas. Mom? He rubbed his eyes. You didn't sleep again. I'm okay, baby. The lie came automatic. You look sad. He climbed into the chair next to her, peered at the papers spread across the table. What's all that? Elena's throat tightened. Grown-up stuff. Is it about my dad? The question shouldn't have surprised her. Nico had always been perceptive, always seemed to know when something was wrong, even when she tried to hide it. But hearing him ask it now, with Lucian's letter still warm in her hand, and the truth finally laid bare, felt like the universe forcing her hand. Yeah, she said quietly. It is. Nico sat up straighter. Did you find him? He found us. She watched her son process that. Saw the flash of hope, then fear, Then something harder to define crossed his face. He was 6 years old, too young to understand the complexity of what had happened, but old enough to know his life was about to change. Is he coming here? Nico asked. I don't know yet. Do you want him to? Elena looked at her son, this boy who had Lucien's eyes and her stubbornness and a right to know his father that she'd been denying him out of fear and wounded pride and a lie she hadn't questioned hard enough. I don't know, she admitted. I'm scared. Of him? Of a lot of things. She pulled Nico onto her lap, even though he was getting too big for it, held him close and breathed in the smell of his shampoo and childhood and the innocence she was about to shatter. But you deserve to know the truth. About everything. And I think your dad does too. She called Marcus Webb 2 hours later, after she'd gotten Nico to school, and sat in her car in the parking lot trying to find the words for a conversation she'd spent 6 years avoiding. Ms. Mitchell, Marcus answered on the first ring. I was hoping you'd call. Is he there? Her voice came out rougher than she intended. Lucien, is he in Seattle? He's been in Seattle for 3 weeks, waiting. 3 weeks? He'd been in the same city for 3 weeks while she'd gone about her life completely unaware. The thought made her skin crawl and her heart race in equal measure. I want to meet him, Elena said, but not alone, and not anywhere near my son until I understand what this is. Understood. Where and when? There's a coffee shop on Pine Street. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. Tell him to come alone. He will. Elena hung up before she could second-guess herself, before the fear could talk her out of it, before she could run again. She didn't sleep that night, paced her apartment while Nico slept, tried on and discarded a dozen different opening lines, practiced conversations that all felt wrong. What did you say to someone you'd loved and lost and mourned and hated and never stopped thinking about? What did you say when you'd been wrong about everything? By the time morning came, she'd settled on the truth. Just the truth. No rehearsed speeches, no carefully constructed defenses. Just two people who'd had their lives torn apart by someone else's malice, trying to figure out if there was anything left worth salvaging. She dropped Nico at school, kissed his forehead, promised him pizza for dinner even though it was a Tuesday and they usually saved pizza for weekends. He looked at her like he knew something was happening but was too afraid to ask what. I love you, she told him. More than anything in this world. You know that, right? I know, Mom. He hugged her tight. Are you going to be okay? Yeah, baby, I'm going to be fine. Another lie. But maybe if she said it enough times, it would become true. The coffee shop was one of those places that tried too hard to be hip. Exposed brick, vintage posters, baristas with elaborate facial hair. Elena arrived 15 minutes early, ordered a coffee she didn't drink, and sat at a table in the back where she could see the door. Lucien walked in at exactly 10 o'clock. 6 years. 6 years since she'd seen him in person, since she'd heard his voice without the filter of a screen or the distance of a news clip. And he looked wrong. That was the first word that came to mind. Wrong in a way that had nothing to do with his clothes or his face and everything to do with the weight he carried. He'd always moved through the world like he owned it, like every room bent to his presence. But now there was something fractured in the way he held himself, something that spoke of too many sleepless nights and too much loss. Their eyes met across the coffee shop. Lucien stopped walking, just stood there, frozen, staring at her like she might disappear if he blinked. Elena forced herself to stay seated, forced herself not to run toward him or away from him or do any of the 1,000 things her body was screaming at her to do. He crossed the room slowly, sat down across from her without asking permission. Up close, the damage was worse. Circles under his eyes dark enough to be bruises. Lines carved into his face that hadn't been there before. He looked like a man who'd spent 6 years in hell and wasn't sure he'd actually made it out. Elena. Her name in his mouth sounded like a prayer and a curse and an apology all at once. Lucien. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup to keep them from shaking. You look terrible. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. You look beautiful. Don't. The word came out sharp. Don't do that. Don't sit here and pretend. I'm not pretending anything. His voice was rough, like he'd been shouting for hours. You are beautiful. You always have been. And I've spent 6 years trying to find you, so excuse me if I can't quite believe you're real right now. Elena's throat closed. She'd prepared herself for anger, for accusations, for him to demand to know why she'd left, why she'd hidden, why she'd destroyed their marriage over a phone call. She hadn't prepared for this. For him looking at her like she was something precious he'd thought was lost forever. I read everything, she said. The evidence, the phone records, all of it. Then you know. I know Serena lied. I know she manipulated both of us. I know I should have... Her voice broke. I should have stayed. Should have demanded answers instead of running. Should have trusted you. No. Lucien's hand moved toward hers, stopped short of touching. Don't do that. Don't make this your fault. Serena knew exactly what she was doing. She knew how to hurt you, how to make you doubt. And He stopped, jaw working. I should have seen it. Should have known something was wrong when you disappeared. Should have figured it out faster. You couldn't have known. I should have. The words came out fierce. You were my wife, my responsibility, and I failed you. Elena stared at him. At this man who'd ruled an empire with ruthless efficiency, who'd made grown men afraid with a look, who'd built power out of violence and blood and things she'd never wanted to know about. And here he sat, broken because he thought he'd failed her. We both failed, she said quietly. We let her win, let her destroy what we had. Is it destroyed? Lucien's eyes locked on hers. Is there anything left? The question hung between them, heavy with 6 years of loss and anger and grief and desperate, aching hope that neither of them wanted to voice. I don't know, Elena admitted. I don't know if we can fix this. Don't know if we should even try. Too much time has passed. Too much damage has been done. I never stopped looking for you. Lucien's voice dropped lower. Never stopped loving you. Never moved on or let go or accepted that you were gone. Every lead I followed, every city I searched, every night I spent wondering if you were alive or dead or just so far gone I'd never find you. None of it made me stop. Serena was with you. Elena hated how the words tasted. In all those photos, at those events, standing next to you like she had any claim to my life? Lucien's expression hardened. She was useful. Had connections I needed. Information about you I thought she might have. I kept her close because I was desperate and stupid and didn't see that she was the reason you left until it was too late. When did you figure it out? 8 months ago. One of my people was going through old security footage for an unrelated case and found video of Serena entering my penthouse with a stolen keycard the day you disappeared. Started pulling threads from there. He leaned back, exhaustion written in every line of his body. By the time I had proof, she'd already done so much damage, I didn't know if I could fix it. Didn't know if you'd believe me, even if I found you. I believe you now. Elena's hands trembled. I believe you, and I'm sorry I didn't 6 years ago. Sorry I didn't fight for us. Sorry I... Stop. Lucien's hand finally bridged the distance, covered hers. His skin was warm, calloused, familiar in a way that made her chest ache. We don't do apologies for things Serena orchestrated. We don't take blame for her poison. Elena looked down at their joined hands. 6 years ago, she'd worn his ring on this finger. Had promised him forever in front of witnesses who probably hadn't believed it would last. And maybe they'd been right. Maybe marriages built in the shadow of empires and blood money were always doomed. But maybe not. There's something you need to know, she said. Her heart was hammering so hard she could barely hear herself think. Before we figure out what happens next, something I should have told you 6 years ago. Lucien went still. What? The day I called you, the day Serena answered your phone, I was coming from a doctor's appointment. Elena pulled her hand back, needed the distance to get through this. I was 12 weeks pregnant. I was calling to tell you we were having a son. The color drained from Lucien's face. What? A son. Nico. He's 6 years old now. He has your eyes and your stubbornness, and he's been asking about you his whole life, and I didn't know what to tell him because I thought... Her voice cracked. I thought you'd chosen Serena. Thought you didn't want us. So I hid him from you and told myself it was better this way, and I was wrong. About everything. Lucien stood so abruptly his chair scraped across the floor. Other patrons glanced over, then quickly looked away when they caught the expression on his face. He turned, walked 3 steps, stopped, turned back. I have a son. Not a question. A statement, raw and jagged. Yes. 6 years old. Yes. And you never... He couldn't seem to finish the sentence, just stood there, hands clenched at his sides, looking like Elena had reached into his chest and ripped something vital out. I know. She stood too, needed to be on her feet for this. I know I should have told you, should have found a way to reach you, even if I thought you'd betrayed me. But I was scared and hurt, and I convinced myself he was better off without you, without your world, without the danger and the violence and everything that comes with your name. That wasn't your choice to make. Lucian's voice was dangerously quiet. I know. 6 years. I missed 6 years of my son's life because your sister is a manipulative psychopath and you believed her lies. I know. Do you? He crossed back to her in 2 strides, towered over her with all that barely controlled fury. Do you have any idea what you've taken from me? What I've lost? Yes. Elena held her ground, even though her instinct was to step back, to protect herself from the rage rolling off him in waves. I know exactly what you lost because I lost it too. I lost you. Lost the man I loved. Lost the life we were supposed to have. And I've spent 6 years raising our son alone and watching him hurt because he doesn't understand why his father isn't there. So, yes, Lucien, I know. They stood there, inches apart, breathing hard. The coffee shop had gone quiet around them. Elena could feel eyes on them but didn't care. Couldn't care about anything except the man in front of her and the truth that was finally, brutally, laid bare between them. I want to meet him, Lucien said finally. My son. I want to meet him. I know, and you will. But not like this. She gestured at him, at the fury still vibrating through his frame. Not when you're angry. Not when you look like you want to tear the world apart. He's 6, Lucien. He's a child. And he doesn't know you're his father yet. Doesn't know anything except that I've been lying to him his whole life. You have been. I know. And I'm going to tell him the truth. But I need to do it right. Need to prepare him. Need to... When? Lucien cut her off. When do I get to meet my son? Elena's mind raced. She'd known this moment would come. Had known from the second she opened that envelope that eventually she'd have to introduce Nico to his father. But knowing it and doing it were different things. And doing it when Lucien looked like he was barely holding himself together felt dangerous. Tomorrow, she said. I'll tell him tonight. Explain everything. Then tomorrow, after school, you can meet him. Somewhere neutral. Somewhere he feels safe. Where? There's a park near our apartment, Westlake Park, 3:30. Lucien nodded sharply. I'll be there. He started to leave, then stopped, turned back to her with an expression that was equal parts anguish and desperate hope. Does he look like me? Elena's eyes burned. Yes. He looks exactly like you. Lucien closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet. What's his full name? Nico Mitchell. Mitchell? He said it like a curse. You gave him your maiden name. I gave him a name that wouldn't get him killed. Elena's voice hardened. I gave him a life away from your world, away from the danger. And maybe that makes me a terrible person. Maybe it makes me a coward, but I kept him safe. That's all I could do. You kept him from me. I kept him alive. The words hung between them, sharp and final. Lucien stared at her for a long moment. Then he walked out without another word. Elena sank back into her chair, shaking so hard she could barely breathe. The other patrons had gone back to their coffee and laptops, the moment passing like it hadn't just destroyed and rebuilt her entire world. She sat there for an hour, trying to figure out how to tell her son that his father was real and alive and wanted to meet him. Trying to find words that would make sense of 6 years of lies. Trying to prepare for a conversation that would change everything. When she finally went home, she cleaned the apartment with manic energy, scrubbed the kitchen until it gleamed, organized Nico's toys, did 3 loads of laundry, anything to keep her hands busy and her mind from spiraling. Nico came home from school full of stories about a science experiment gone wrong and a girl named Maya who'd shared her crackers at lunch. Elena let him talk, made him a snack, helped him with his homework. Normal mom things, normal afternoon routines. But when dinner was done and the dishes were washed and Nico was in his pajamas, she sat him down on the couch and knew she couldn't put it off any longer. "Nico, we need to talk." He looked up from the book he was reading, saw her expression, and immediately went serious. "Is something bad happening?" "No, not bad, just important." She pulled him close, and I needed the contact to get through this. "You know how you've been asking about your dad?" Nico went still. "Yeah. Well, I found him, and he wants to meet you." Her son pulled back, stared at her with Lucien's eyes wide and shocked. "Really? Really? He's here? In Seattle? And tomorrow after school, you're going to meet him at the park." "Tomorrow?" Nico's voice climbed. "That's so soon. I didn't think—" He stopped, confusion and hope and fear all chasing across his face. "Why now? Why not before?" Elena had prepared for this question, had known she'd have to explain without destroying Nico's faith in either of his parents or himself. "It's complicated," she started, then caught herself. "No, you deserve better than that. The truth is, your dad and I had a fight 6 years ago, a big one, and I left before we could fix it. I thought he didn't want us, thought he'd chosen someone else. So I hid from him and I took you with me, and I was wrong." "You thought he didn't want me?" Nico's voice went small. "No, baby, never you. He didn't even know about you. I found out I was pregnant the same day we fought, and I left before I could tell him." Elena's throat tightened. "So he's been looking for me all this time, for us, and he finally found us, and now he wants to meet you more than anything." Nico processed this, his young face working through emotions he didn't have names for yet. "Is he nice? He can be? Is he scary? Sometimes." Elena wouldn't lie about that. "But he won't hurt you. He would never hurt you." "What if he doesn't like me?" The question broke Elena's heart. "He's going to love you, I promise. You're his son. How could he not?" "You said you and him had a fight. Are you still fighting?" "No. We're trying to figure things out, trying to understand what happened and if we can fix it." She cupped Nico's face, made him look at her. "But whatever happens between me and your dad, that doesn't change how we feel about you. You're our son, both of us, and we both love you." "Even though he just met me?" "He loved you before he even knew you existed, trust me." Nico was quiet for a long time, then, "What's his name?" "Lucien. Lucien Vale." "That sounds like a superhero name." Despite everything, Elena laughed. "Yeah, it kind of does. Is he rich?" "Very." "Does he have a big house?" "Several." Nico's eyes went wide. "Really?" "Really, your dad is a very powerful man. He runs businesses and knows important people and has more money than we could spend in 100 lifetimes." Elena paused. "But that's not what makes him important. What makes him important is that he's your father, and he's been looking for you, for us. And now he's here. Are we going to live with him?" "I don't know yet. We're taking this slow, one step at a time, starting with meeting him tomorrow." She pulled Nico close again. "Are you okay with that? With meeting him?" Nico nodded against her chest. "Yeah, I'm scared, but I want to." "Being scared is okay. I'm scared too." "Really? Really? This is scary for all of us, but we're going to get through it together." They sat like that for a while, Elena holding her son and trying not to think about how tomorrow everything would change. How Lucien would see Nico and Nico would see Lucien, and their lives would collide in ways she couldn't predict or control. She put Nico to bed an hour later, stayed with him until he fell asleep. Then she went to her own room, pulled out the box she kept hidden in the back of her closet, and opened it for the first time in 6 years. Inside was her wedding ring, the photos from their wedding day, a shirt of Lucien's she'd stolen and never returned, things she'd kept even when she'd convinced herself she hated him, even when she'd built a new life and a new identity and tried to forget the woman she used to be. She pulled out the wedding photo. They looked so young, so happy, so convinced they were building something that would last. Maybe they still could. Maybe the wreckage wasn't permanent. Maybe... Her phone rang. Unknown number. Elena almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello? Elena? Serena's voice poured through the line like poison. I heard you and Lucien had a little reunion. How sweet. Elena's blood went cold. Did you really think I wouldn't know? That I wouldn't have people watching? You've been gone for 6 years, sister. Did you think the world just stopped while you were playing house in whatever dump you've been hiding in? What do you want? I want you to understand something. Serena's voice went hard. Lucien is mine. He's been mine since the day you left. And whatever story he told you about me manipulating you, about me stealing his phone and blocking your calls, it's just that. A story. An excuse for why he moved on. I saw the evidence. Evidence can be fabricated. You of all people should know that. Serena laughed. You think he spent 6 years looking for you? He spent 6 months. Then he gave up. Then he came to me. And we built something real while you were off raising a bastard who… Elena hung up, blocked the number, threw the phone across the room. Her hands were shaking. Serena's voice echoed in her skull, all those poisoned words trying to burrow in and make her doubt again. Make her question what she'd seen, what Lucien had told her, what the evidence clearly showed. But she wouldn't. Not this time. Serena had won once with lies and manipulation. She wouldn't win again. Elena picked up her phone, called Marcus Webb. Ms. Mitchell, he answered. Is everything all right? Serena just called me. How did she get my number? A pause. I don't know, but I'll find out. I need you to do something else. I need you to make sure she stays away from my son, from me, from Lucien. Whatever it takes. I'll talk to Lucien. He'll want to know about this. Tell him. Elena's voice hardened. Tell him his companion has been making threats. See what he does about it. She hung up, sat in the dark, tried to breathe through the fear that Serena could still reach her, could still touch her life after everything she'd done. Tomorrow. Tomorrow Lucien would meet his son, and then they'd deal with Serena. Together. Elena didn't sleep that night, just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Nico breathe in the next room, and tried to prepare for a reunion 6 years in the making. When morning came, she got Nico ready for school with shaking hands, made him breakfast, packed his lunch, kissed him goodbye at the door, and told him she'd pick him up at 3 for their trip to the park. I'm nervous, he admitted. Me too, baby, but it's going to be okay. Another lie. Or maybe a hope. She didn't know anymore. The day dragged. Elena tried to work but couldn't focus. Tried to clean but kept stopping mid-task. Finally gave up and just paced her apartment, watching the clock tick toward 3 o'clock. When it was time, she drove to Nico's school. Found him waiting outside with his backpack, eyes wide and uncertain. Is he there? Nico asked as soon as he got in the car. I don't know yet. We'll find out. They drove to Westlake Park in silence. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. What if Lucien didn't show? What if he'd changed his mind? What if… He was already there when they arrived, standing by the fountain in a suit that probably cost more than Elena's car, looking completely out of place among the joggers and dog walkers and parents pushing strollers, looking like a man about to meet his son for the first time. Elena parked, took a breath, looked at Nico. That's him, she said quietly. That's your dad. Nico stared through the windshield, taking in the man who'd given him half his DNA and none of his history. He's tall. Yeah, he is. He looks serious. He usually is. Is he mad at us? No, baby. He's just nervous, like we are. Elena unbuckled her seatbelt. Ready? Nico nodded, though his face said he was anything but. They got out of the car, started walking toward the fountain, toward Lucien, toward a future that was terrifying and necessary and 6 years overdue. Lucien saw them coming. His entire body went rigid. His eyes locked on Nico with an intensity that would have been frightening if Elena didn't understand what was behind it. Wonder, grief, desperate aching love for a child he'd never met. They stopped a few feet away. Elena kept one hand on Nico's shoulder, anchoring herself as much as him. Nico, she said softly. This is Lucien, your father. Lucien dropped to one knee so he was at Nico's eye level. Up close, the resemblance was staggering. Same dark eyes, same sharp jawline, same way of holding themselves like they were bracing for impact. Hi, Lucien said. His voice was rough. I'm It's good to finally meet you. Nico stared at him. You're really my dad? Yes. How come you never came before? The question hit like a bullet. Lucien's expression cracked just for a second before he pulled it back together. Because I didn't know where you were. Your mom and I. We got separated, and I've been looking for you both ever since. For 6 years? For 6 years. Nico processed this. That's a long time. It is. Too long. Lucien's hands flexed like he wanted to reach for his son, but didn't know if he was allowed. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. Promise? I promise. They stared at each other, father and son, strangers connected by blood and loss, and a future that was just beginning to take shape. Then Nico said, Mom says you're really rich. Is that true? Despite everything, Lucien smiled. Yeah, it's true. Do you have a pool? Several. Can I see them? Lucien looked up at Elena. She nodded, throat too tight for words. Yeah, Lucien said, looking back at his son. You can see them. You can see everything, whatever you want. Cool. Nico's hand found Elena's, squeezed tight. This is weird. I know, Lucien said, but good weird, I hope. I don't know yet. Nico's honesty was brutal and perfect. I'll tell you later. And in that moment, watching her son meet his father for the first time, Elena felt something shift. Not healing, that would take time, work, honesty between all of them. But a beginning, a chance, a possibility that maybe, just maybe, they could build something from the ruins Serena had left behind. They ended up at a pizza place 3 blocks from the park because Nico declared he was starving and Elena didn't have the energy to argue. Lucien followed them in his own car, a black Mercedes that made Elena's Honda look like it was held together with duct tape and optimism, and met them inside with the kind of rigid formality that suggested he had no idea how to be around children. Nico slid into the booth first, Elena next to him, and Lucien sat across from them looking like he was attending a business meeting where the stakes were his entire life. So, Nico said, studying the menu with intense concentration, do you like pepperoni? Lucien blinked. Yes. Good, because Mom always gets vegetables on half, and it's gross. Nico shot Elena an accusatory look. Vegetables don't belong on pizza. Vegetables are good for you, Elena said automatically. They're gross for me. Despite the tension coiled in every muscle, Lucien's mouth twitched. I'm with Nico on this one. See? Nico gestured at his father like this settled the matter. He gets it. You two just met and you're already ganging up on me. Elena tried to sound annoyed but couldn't quite manage it. This was surreal. Sitting in a pizza place with her son and the man she'd loved and lost, arguing about toppings like they were a normal family instead of 3 people held together by DNA and 6 years of wreckage. The waitress came by. They ordered large pepperoni, no vegetables, and 3 sodas. When she left, silence descended like a weight. Nico broke it. Mom says you're important, like run businesses and stuff. I do, Lucien said carefully. What kind of businesses? Elena tensed. This was dangerous territory. How did you explain to a 6-year-old that his father's empire was built on things that existed in the gray spaces between legal and lethal? But Lucien surprised her. Different kinds, real estate mostly. I buy buildings, fix them up, sell them, or rent them out. That sounds boring. It can be. Do you have any fun jobs? Not really. Mostly just meetings and paperwork. Nico looked disappointed. Tyler's dad is a firefighter. That's way cooler. Yeah, Lucien agreed. That is cooler. Do you at least have a cool car? I have several. Nico's eyes lit up. Can I see them? Nico. Elena started, but Lucien cut her off. Yes. Anytime you want. The pizza arrived. Nico attacked it with the single-minded focus of a hungry child, leaving Elena and Lucien to navigate conversation around mouthfuls of cheese and marinara. He's a good kid, Lucien said quietly. He is. You did that. Raised him right. Elena's throat tightened. I tried. You succeeded. Lucien's eyes were dark, intense. I can see it. The way he talks, the way he carries himself. He's confident, happy. You gave him that. He deserves more than just me. The words came out before she could stop them. He's got more now. Lucian's jaw set. He's got me, and I'm not going anywhere. Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this time things would be different, that the truth was finally out and they could build something real from the ashes. But 6 years of running had taught her that trust was expensive and easy to lose. What happens now? She asked. What do you want to happen? I don't know. I haven't thought past today. She watched Nico inhale another slice of pizza. He needs stability, routine, not my world, Lucian finished for her. I know, and I'm not asking you to throw him into it, but I want to be part of his life. Want to see him, get to know him, make up for the 6 years I lost. That's going to take time. I have time. And what about us? Elena hated how small her voice sounded. What about what Serena did? What we lost? Lucien's expression hardened. Serena's being handled. What does that mean? It means she called you last night making threats, and I don't take threats against my family lightly. She's not a threat anymore. She can't hurt us. Can't she? Lucien leaned forward. Elena, she spent 6 years destroying our marriage. 6 years keeping me away from my son. You think she's just going to accept that we found each other? That she lost? What are you going to do to her? Nothing illegal, nothing violent. He paused. But she's going to answer for what she did. She's going to face both of us, and she's going to admit the truth. Elena's stomach twisted. I don't want to see her. You won't have to. But I need you there when I confront her. Need her to see what she destroyed so she understands the consequences. Lucien, she tried to take everything from me. From us. And she almost succeeded. His voice dropped, went dangerous. I can't let that stand. Mom? Nico's voice cut through the tension. Can I get dessert? Elena blinked, pulled herself back to the present. What? Dessert? They have ice cream. He pointed at the menu, hopeful. Sure, baby, whatever you want. While Nico debated between chocolate and vanilla, Lucien's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, then looked at Elena. I need to take this. Work thing. I'll be right back. He stepped outside. Through the window, Elena could see him pacing, phone pressed to his ear, expression carved from stone. Whatever he was hearing, it wasn't good. Is he always that serious? Nico asked. Pretty much. Are you going to get back together with him? The question caught Elena off guard. I don't know. Do you want to? It's complicated. Nico rolled his eyes. You always say that when you don't want to answer. Because it's always true. Elena pulled him close, kissed the top of his head. Your dad and I have a lot to figure out, a lot of hurt to work through. But what matters is that we both love you. That's not complicated. He doesn't know me yet. How can he love me? Because you're his son. That's how it works. That doesn't make sense. Love doesn't always make sense, baby. Lucien came back inside looking like someone had punched him in the gut. He sat down heavily, jaw working. What's wrong? Elena asked. Serena's in Seattle. The blood drained from Elena's face. What? She flew in this morning, checked into the Fairmont. My people have been tracking her since last night. He looked at Elena with something that might have been regret or fury or both. She's not done. Whatever she's planning, she's not done. How did she even know where we are? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Lucien's phone buzzed again. He ignored it. I need to get you both somewhere safe, somewhere she can't reach you. We're not running again. Elena's voice came out harder than she intended. I spent 6 years running from her poison. I'm not doing it anymore. Elena, no. You said we'd confront her. You said she'd answer for what she did. So let's do it. Now. Today. Before she has a chance to spin more lies or hurt anyone else. Not with Nico here. Then we get him somewhere safe, and we deal with this. Elena's hands were shaking, but her voice stayed steady. I'm tired of being afraid of her. Tired of letting her control our lives. This ends now. Lucien studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, but we do this my way, my people, my terms. Fine. Mom? Nico looked between them, ice cream forgotten. What's happening? Nothing you need to worry about, baby. Elena smoothed his hair back. We're going to take you to stay with someone for a little while. Someone safe. While your dad and I take care of some grown-up stuff. Is it about the bad lady? Nico's voice went small. The one who hurt you? Elena's heart cracked. She'd been so careful, so deliberate about not letting Nico see her fear, her anger, the damage Serena had left behind. But kids saw everything. Yeah, she admitted. It's about her, but it's going to be okay. I promise. 30 minutes later, they were at Marcus Webb's house on the outskirts of Seattle. It was small, nondescript, the kind of place that didn't attract attention. Marcus met them at the door with a warm smile that didn't quite hide the alertness in his eyes. This must be Nico, he said, crouching down. Your dad told me a lot about you. Nico looked skeptical. He just met me today. And he's already very proud of you. Marcus straightened, looked at Elena. He'll be safe here. I've got security, supplies, and more movies than any kid could watch in a week. I don't want to stay here, Nico said. I want to stay with you guys. Elena knelt in front of him. I know, baby, but this is important, and it won't be for long, just a few hours. You're going to fight the bad lady, aren't you? Nico's eyes, Lucien's eyes, were too knowing for a 6-year-old. We're going to talk to her, that's all. Will you come back? Of course we'll come back, always. She pulled him into a hug, breathed in the smell of pizza and childhood, and the fierce love that had kept her going through 6 years of exile. I love you more than anything. Love you too, Mom. Lucien stepped forward, awkward but determined. Can I? He stopped, seemed to gather himself. Can I hug you? Before we go? Nico hesitated. Then he nodded. Lucien gathered his son into his arms like he was made of something precious and breakable, held him close and pressed his face into Nico's hair, and didn't say anything because what could you say when you were holding your child for the first time, and it might be the last? When they pulled apart, Lucien's eyes were wet. I'll see you soon, I promise. You better, Nico said. You promised we'd look at your cars. We will, all of them. They left Nico with Marcus and got back in Lucien's car. Elena felt like she was leaving a piece of herself behind, but this was necessary. This was the only way forward. Where are we going? She asked as Lucien pulled out of the driveway. The Fairmont. Where's she staying? Just walking in? She wants a confrontation. I'm giving her one. Lucien's hands tightened on the wheel. But on my terms. With witnesses. With evidence. With you there to see her admit what she did. What if she doesn't admit it? She will. I'll make sure of it. Elena wanted to ask how, but looking at Lucien's face, all sharp angles and controlled fury, she decided she didn't want to know. The drive downtown was silent. Elena watched Seattle blur past the window and tried to prepare herself for seeing Serena again, for looking her sister in the eye after 6 years and demanding answers for the wreckage she'd caused. They parked in the underground garage at the Fairmont. Lucien made a call as they walked to the elevator, his voice low and commanding. By the time they reached the lobby, 3 men in suits were waiting. Security, Lucien's people. They fell into formation around them without a word. She's in the penthouse, one of them said. Checked in under her own name. Hasn't left the room since arrival. Good. Lucien's expression was carved from ice. Let's go. The elevator ride up felt like descending into battle. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Part of her wanted to turn around, wanted to run, wanted to hide Nico away and never look back. But a bigger part, the part that had survived 6 years of fear and loneliness and lies, wanted this. Wanted to face the woman who'd destroyed her life and make her answer for it. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse suite. Expensive, tasteful. The kind of place Serena had always gravitated toward because she believed luxury was her birthright. She was standing by the window, silhouetted against the Seattle skyline, holding a glass of wine like she didn't have a care in the world. When she turned and saw them, her smile was pure poison. Elena, Lucien, how domestic. She took a sip of wine. I was wondering when you'd show up. You knew we would, Lucien said. His voice was flat, dangerous. Of course. You're both so predictable. Elena runs, you chase. I watch from the sidelines and wait for the inevitable. Serena's eyes landed on Elena, sharp and assessing. You look tired, sister. Motherhood not agreeing with you? Don't. Elena's voice came out steady despite the rage building in her chest. Don't pretend this is a family reunion. Don't pretend you care. Oh, but I do care. I've always cared. Serena set down her wine glass, moved closer. I cared when you married a man you didn't deserve. I cared when you played house in the shadows of his empire. And I cared when you ran away and gave me the opening I needed. To do what? Lucien's voice cut like a blade. To steal my phone? Block my wife's calls? Intercept our messages? Spend 6 years lying to both of us? I prefer to think of it as helping you both see the truth. Serena's smile never wavered. Elena was never strong enough for your world, Lucien. Never smart enough. Never ruthless enough. She was a liability. I did you a favor. A favor. Elena's hands clenched into fists. You destroyed my marriage. Kept my husband from knowing about his son. Made me believe for 6 years that I'd been abandoned. And you call that a favor? I call it necessary. Serena turned back to the window, her reflection sharp in the glass. You want to know why I did it? Fine, I'll tell you. I did it because I was tired of watching you stumble through a life you didn't earn. Tired of watching Lucien waste his brilliance on someone who couldn't even understand the game he was playing. Tired of being the sister who had to smile and pretend she was happy for you while you lived my dream. Your dream? Elena's voice rose. You wanted Lucien. I wanted everything you had, everything you took for granted. Serena faced them again, and for the first time Elena saw the ugly truth beneath the beautiful mask. Raw jealousy, corrosive envy, the kind of poison that ate someone from the inside out. You were always the favorite, always the one people protected, the sweet one, the innocent one. And I was the ambitious one, the difficult one, the one who had to fight for everything while you just existed and got everything handed to you. That's not true. Isn't it? Lucien chose you, not because you were stronger or smarter or better, but because you were easy, uncomplicated, safe. Serena's laugh was bitter, and I spent 6 years trying to prove I was the better choice, that I could be the partner he needed, that I deserved what you threw away. You're insane, Elena breathed. I'm honest. Finally. Serena picked up her wine again, drained it. You want me to admit I manipulated you both? Fine. I did. I stole Lucien's phone when he left it on his desk. I answered your call, Elena, and I made sure you heard exactly what I needed you to hear. Then I blocked your number, intercepted the messages, fed Lucien false leads when he started looking for you, all of it. Why? Lucien's voice was barely above a whisper. Because I could. Because I wanted you to myself. Because I thought if I just had enough time, you'd see that I was better for you than she ever was. Serena met his eyes, and for a while it worked. You kept me close, trusted me. Let me into your world in ways you never let Elena. As a tool, Lucien said coldly, not as a partner, never as a replacement. Does the distinction matter? I was there, she wasn't. The distinction is everything. Lucien moved closer, towered over her with barely controlled fury. You weren't there because I wanted you. You were there because I was desperate for any information about my wife, any lead that might bring her home, and you fed me lies while knowing exactly where she was. I didn't know where she was, not until recently. But you knew she'd left because of what you did. You knew she was pregnant. You knew I had a son out there and you kept that from me for 6 years. Serena's mask cracked, just for a second. I thought you'd move on, thought eventually you'd stop looking and see what was right in front of you. You thought wrong. Clearly. Serena's composure was fracturing, the polished exterior crumbling to reveal the desperate, jealous woman beneath. But don't act like you're blameless in this, Lucien. You kept me around, used my connections. Let me believe I had a place in your life. You had a place. As an asset, nothing more. And her? Serena pointed at Elena. What does she have? Besides a child she hid from you and 6 years of lies. She has me. Lucien's voice went quiet, absolute. She always did. Even when I thought she was gone. Even when I was looking in all the wrong places. She was the only woman I ever loved. The only one I ever wanted. And you knew that. That's why you tried so hard to destroy it. Serena flinched like he'd struck her. You're making a mistake. She'll hurt you again. She'll run. No. Elena stepped forward, found her voice. I'm done running, done hiding, done letting you poison my life with your jealousy and your lies. She pulled out her phone, held it up. And before you try to spin this any other way, you should know I've been recording this entire conversation. Serena's face went white. Every word, every admission, all of it. Elena's hands weren't shaking anymore. You wanted to destroy my marriage? Well, you failed. You wanted Lucien? You never had him. You wanted to take everything from me? All you did was waste 6 years of your own life obsessing over something you could never have. You can't use that recording. It's legal in Washington state as long as one party consents, Lucien said, and Elena consented, which means every threat you made, every confession you gave, it's all admissible evidence. Evidence of what? I didn't break any laws. Didn't you? Lucien's smile was sharp. Theft of my phone. Fraud. Corporate espionage using stolen credentials. Harassment. Interference with a federal investigation when you fed my people false information. He counted off on his fingers. I've had lawyers going through your actions for the past 8 months. Building a case. Waiting for the moment you'd slip up. You're bluffing. Am I? Want to test that theory? Lucien pulled out his own phone, showed her the screen. One call, that's all it takes. One call, and you'll have federal agents at your door by morning. Serena's face cycled through emotions. Shock, rage, fear, calculation. Elena watched her sister, this woman she'd once loved, once trusted, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. What do you want? Serena asked finally. Her voice had lost its edge, gone small and defeated. I want you to disappear, Lucien said. I want you out of Los Angeles, out of our lives, out of the country if possible. And I want you to never contact Elena or my son again. And if I don't, then I make that call, and you spend the next decade in a federal prison explaining to your cellmate how you got there. He stepped closer. Your choice, exile or imprisonment. Serena looked at Elena, eyes desperate. You'd really let him do this to me? I'm your sister. You stopped being my sister the day you answered Lucien's phone and decided to destroy my life. Elena's voice was hard. You made your choice. Now live with it. Elena, please. No, you don't get to beg. You don't get to ask for mercy. You get to leave. That's the only kindness you're getting from me. Serena stood there, trapped between them, all her schemes and manipulations finally catching up with her. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. I loved him too, you know. It wasn't all calculation. I really did. Love doesn't destroy. Elena cut her off. What you felt was obsession, possession, jealousy. But not love. Love doesn't rip families apart, doesn't lie and scheme and manipulate, doesn't steal 6 years from people's lives because you wanted what wasn't yours. Serena's face crumpled. For just a moment, she looked less like the polished, dangerous woman who'd orchestrated their destruction and more like the sister Elena had grown up with. Young, scared, lost. Then the moment passed and the mask came back up. Fine, you win. Serena grabbed her purse from the couch. I'll go. I'll disappear. I'll give you your perfect little reunion. One more thing, Lucien said. The offshore accounts. The money you embezzled from my companies over the past 6 years. Every cent of it gets returned. Today. I didn't, don't insult me. I have the paper trail. You've been siphoning funds through shell corporations you thought I didn't know about. 47 million over 6 years. He showed her another screen. Transfer it back or add embezzlement to your list of charges. Serena's jaw clenched, but she pulled out her phone, made the transfers with shaking hands. Lucien's phone pinged with each confirmation. Done, she said finally. Are we finished? Almost. Elena stepped forward one last time. I need to hear you say it, out loud. No more games. What you did. Why you did it. All of it. I already told you. Say it again, for the recording. So there's no question, no ambiguity, no room for you to twist this later. Serena's eyes flashed with hatred. But she spoke. I manipulated you both, stole Lucien's phone, blocked your calls, kept you apart because I was jealous and I wanted what you had. I destroyed your marriage and kept Lucian from knowing about his son because I'm a selfish, vindictive person who couldn't stand seeing you happy. And? Elena prompted. And I'm sorry. The words sounded like they were being dragged out of her. I'm sorry for what I did, for the hurt I caused, for the 6 years I stole from you. Elena stopped the recording, saved it, sent it to 3 different email addresses for safekeeping. Now we're done, she said. Serena grabbed her suitcase, apparently she'd already packed, anticipating this outcome, and walked to the elevator. At the doors, she turned back one last time. You think this fixes everything? That you can just pick up where you left off and be happy? No, Elena said honestly. I think we have years of damage to repair, years of trust to rebuild, years of Nico's childhood that Lucien missed and can never get back. But at least now we can try, without you poisoning everything we touch. I hope it's worth it. Serena's voice was bitter. I hope he's everything you remember, because if he's not, if you realize you built him up in your head for 6 years and the reality doesn't match, you'll have no one to blame but yourself. The elevator doors closed on her face. Elena stood there staring at the closed doors and felt something inside her finally release. The fear, the anger, the weight of 6 years of lies. All of it drained away, left her hollow and exhausted and finally free. Lucian's hand found hers. Are you okay? I don't know. She looked at him. Ask me again in a year. Fair enough. He squeezed her hand. Thank you for being brave enough to face her, for recording it all, for... Don't thank me. We both needed this. Elena's legs felt unsteady. Can we go get our son now? I need to see him. Need to make sure he's real and safe and ours. Yeah, let's go get him. They left the Fairmont, left the penthouse where Serena's schemes had finally been laid bare, and drove back to Marcus's house in silence. Elena kept her phone in her hand, the recording saved and sent and backed up 3 times over. Insurance, protection. Proof that this time the truth had won. Marcus opened the door looking relieved. He's fine. Fell asleep watching some dinosaur documentary about an hour ago. They found Nico curled up on the couch, thumb in his mouth, a habit Elena had been trying to break him of, looking impossibly young. Lucien stood over him, just watching, his expression something Elena couldn't quite name. I missed everything, Lucien said quietly. First smile, first word, first steps. All of it. I know, I'm sorry. Don't. He looked at her. We don't apologize for what Serena did. Remember? This one's mine. I chose to hide him, chose to run, chose to believe her lies instead of fighting for the truth. Elena's throat tightened. You deserve to know about him, deserve to be there. And you deserved a husband who protected you better, who saw through Serena's manipulation before she could hurt you. Lucien moved closer, his voice rough. We both failed. Both made choices we can't take back. But we're here now. That has to be enough. Is it? Enough? I don't know yet. He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so familiar, so achingly right, that Elena's eyes burned. But I want to find out. Want to see if we can build something from this wreckage, if you're willing to try. Elena looked at Nico, still sleeping peacefully, unaware of the confrontation they'd just survived. Then at Lucien, this man who'd searched for her for 6 years, who'd torn apart his life trying to find her, who was looking at her now like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. I'm willing, she said, but it won't be easy. Won't be quick. There's too much damage, too much time lost. I know, but we have time now. We have truth. We have our son. Lucien's hand found hers again. That's more than we had yesterday. Yeah. Elena squeezed his hand back. It is. Nico stirred, opened his eyes, saw them both standing there. Did you fight the bad lady? We did, Elena said. Did you win? Lucien smiled. Yeah, kid, we won. Winning didn't feel like Elena thought it would. There was no relief, no sudden lightness, no sense that everything was fixed. Just exhaustion and the weight of knowing they'd survived Serena's poison but still had to figure out how to live with the scars. They took Nico back to Elena's apartment that night. Lucien followed them up the stairs, taking in the peeling paint and the smell of fish from the bait shop below, and the reality of the life his wife and son had been living while he'd been searching. He didn't say anything, but Elena saw his jaw tighten, saw the guilt flash across his face before he locked it down. "It's not much," she said, defensive despite herself. "It's home." Lucien looked at the pictures Nico had drawn taped to the refrigerator, the stack of library books on the coffee table, the worn couch where Elena had spent countless nights rocking a crying baby. "You built this, made it safe. That's more than not much." Nico was already half asleep again, draped over Elena's shoulder like a warm, heavy blanket. She carried him to his bedroom, barely big enough for the twin bed and dresser, and tucked him in. Lucien stood in the doorway watching. "Does he have nightmares?" Lucien asked quietly. "Sometimes. Usually about monsters. Sometimes about being alone." Elena smoothed Nico's hair back. "He's always been afraid of being left behind. Because of me. Because I wasn't there. Because kids have fears. Don't make everything about what we lost." She stood, moved past Lucien into the tiny living room. "You want coffee? It's terrible, but it's all I have. I want to understand." Lucien closed Nico's door most of the way, followed her to the kitchen. "I want to know what the past 6 years were like for you, for him. I want to fix it?" Elena filled the coffee pot with shaking hands. "You can't fix 6 years, Lucien. Can't go back and erase them. Can't make up for the birthdays you missed or the nights I sat in the ER alone when he had croup or the 1,000 small moments that made him who he is. I know that. Do you? Because you keep looking at this place like it's a crime scene, like I failed somehow by not giving him more. That's not what I'm thinking." "Then what are you thinking?" She turned to face him, all the adrenaline from confronting Serena draining away and leaving her raw. "Because I'm standing here trying to figure out if we're supposed to just pick up where we left off or start over, or what the hell we're supposed to do now that the villain's been defeated and we're stuck with the reality." Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I'm thinking I don't know how to be a father. I'm thinking I have a 6-year-old son who doesn't know me and has no reason to trust me. I'm thinking I spent 6 years building an empire and chasing ghosts, and none of it matters because I missed the only thing that was real." Elena's anger deflated. "Lucien, I'm thinking I'm terrified," he continued, voice rough, "that I'll screw this up, that he'll hate me for not being there, that you'll realize I'm not worth the effort of rebuilding what we had. That's not... Let me finish." He moved closer, close enough that Elena could see the exhaustion carved into his face, the fear he was trying so hard to hide. "I'm thinking I love you. Still love you. Never stopped loving you even when I thought you were gone forever. And I'm thinking that's not enough. Love wasn't enough 6 years ago to protect you from Serena. Wasn't enough to make you trust me when everything fell apart. So what makes me think it's enough now?" Elena's throat closed. "I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to tell me the truth. Do you still love me? Or is this just about Nico? About giving him a father?" The question hung between them, brutal and necessary. Elena looked at this man who'd been her husband, her love, her whole world before it all came crashing down. Looked at the years carved into his face and the desperate hope in his eyes and the truth she'd been avoiding since the moment she'd opened that envelope. "I never stopped loving you either," she admitted. "I tried to hate you, tried to convince myself you'd betrayed me and moved on and didn't deserve my grief. But I couldn't. Even when I thought you'd chosen Serena, even when I was building a life without you, you were still there. In every thought, every decision, every moment I looked at Nico and saw your face." Lucien's hands shook. "Then why does this feel so hard?" "Because love isn't magic. Doesn't fix damage or erase time or make 6 years of pain disappear." Elena's eyes burned. "Because we're different people now. I'm not the girl who married you. You're not the man who promised me forever. And Nico's the wild card neither of us planned for. So what do? We start slow. We build trust. We let Nico get to know you without pressure. We figure out if the people we are now can make this work." She reached for his hand, laced their fingers together. "And we stop expecting it to be easy." Lucien pulled her close, wrapped his arms around her like she might disappear again if he let go. Elena let herself sink into him, breathed in the scent that was still familiar under the expensive cologne, let herself believe for just a moment that maybe this could work. I have to go back to Los Angeles, Lucienne said into her hair. Have to deal with the fallout from Serena. Make sure she actually leaves. Handle the business she sabotaged. Elena's stomach dropped. When? Tomorrow. But I'll come back. Every weekend. More if I can. He pulled back to look at her. And I want you both to come visit. See the house. Let Nico experience that side of his life. Let you both decide if it's something you want to be part of. Lucienne, I can't just uproot him. I'm not asking you to, not yet. I'm asking you to visit, to give this a chance. His hands cupped her face. I know I don't deserve another shot. No. I failed you 6 years ago by not protecting you better. But I'm asking anyway. Please. Elena thought about Nico, about the questions he'd been asking his whole life, about the father he deserved to know, thought about the apartment that smelled like fish and the life she'd built from nothing and the fear of losing it all again. Then she thought about the possibility, the what if, the chance that maybe, just maybe, they could build something real this time. Okay, she said, we'll visit. But slow, Lucian. We do this slow. As slow as you need. He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she was something precious he'd almost lost. And for the first time in 6 years, Elena let herself believe it might be true. Lucienne left the next morning after a breakfast where Nico peppered him with questions about his cars and his houses and whether he had a pool. He promised to call every day, promised to send pictures, promised to come back the following weekend. And then he was gone, the sound of the Mercedes fading into Seattle traffic. Is he really coming back? Nico asked, watching the street from the window. He said he would. But how do you know? I don't. Not for sure, but I hope, he means it this time. What if he doesn't? Elena pulled Nico close. Then we'll be okay anyway, like we've always been. But Lucian did come back, that weekend, and the next, and the one after that. He showed up every Friday evening, stayed until Sunday night, and slowly, awkwardly, started learning how to be a father. The first few visits were rough. Nico was wary, testing boundaries, asking questions that didn't have easy answers. Why weren't you there when I was born? Do you wish Mom had told you about me? Are you going to leave again? Lucienne answered everything honestly, didn't sugarcoat the pain or the loss or the fact that he'd missed so much he could never get back. I'm sorry, he told Nico during the third visit while they sat in the park watching other kids play. I'm sorry I wasn't there, that you grew up without me, that your mom had to do everything alone. It wasn't your fault, Nico said, repeating what Elena had told him a dozen times. The bad lady lied. Yeah, but I should have figured it out faster. Should have found you sooner. You found us now, that's what Mom says. She says we can't fix the past, but we can do better in the future. Lucian looked at his son. This wise, serious 6-year-old who'd learned too young about betrayal and lies and the complicated nature of family. Your mom's a smart woman. I know. She's the smartest person I know. Nico paused. But you're pretty smart too. Mom said you run a whole bunch of businesses. I do, but that's not the same as being smart about people, about family. Lucian's voice went quiet. I'm still learning that part. That's okay. I'm still learning lots of stuff too. Like how to tie my shoes. I keep getting the loops wrong. I could teach you, if you want. Nico considered this. Then he held out his foot. Okay. It was a small thing, tiny, teaching his son to tie his shoes in a park on a Sunday afternoon. But Lucian's hands shook as he demonstrated the loops and bunny ears and the way to pull them tight. And when Nico got it right on the third try, the pride that flooded Lucian's face made Elena's chest ache. These were the moments they'd missed, the small, ordinary ones that made a childhood. And they couldn't get them back, but they could start building new ones. The first time they visited Los Angeles was in October, 2 months after the confrontation with Serena. Lucienne sent a car to pick them up from the airport. Not the Mercedes, but an SUV with enough room for Nico's booster seat and Elena's overnight bag and the stuffed dinosaur Nico refused to travel without. The house was in the hills, sprawling and modern, and so different from the cramped apartment Elena had been living in that she felt like she'd stepped into someone else's life. Nico's eyes went wide when he saw the pool, the game room, the bedroom Lucian had set up for him, complete with more toys than any child could need. "Is this all mine?" Nico asked, spinning in circles. "All yours," Lucian confirmed, "whenever you're here." "Can we live here?" The question caught Elena off guard. She looked at Lucien, saw the hope flash across his face before he controlled it. "That's up to your mom," he said, carefully. Nico turned to Elena. "Can we? Please? There's a pool and a game room, and my room is huge, and we'll talk about it," Elena interrupted gently. "This is just a visit, baby. We're not making any big decisions right now." "But, Nico, we'll talk about it later." He deflated but nodded. "Okay. Can I go swimming?" "After you unpack." He ran off to explore his new room, leaving Elena and Lucien alone in the hallway. "Sorry," Lucien said. "I should have prepared him better, told him this was just temporary." "It's fine, he's 6. Everything is immediate to him." Elena looked around at the house that could have been hers, that should have been hers, that felt both familiar and foreign. "This is a lot." "Too much?" "I don't know yet." She met his eyes. "What do you want, Lucien?" "Really? Do you want us to move here? To uproot Nico from the only home he's known? To become part of your world? I want you safe. Want him safe. Want to be able to see you both more than weekends." He moved closer. "But I'm not going to pressure you. Not going to make you choose between the life you built and the one we could have. That's not fair." "None of this is fair, but we're doing it anyway." Elena's voice softened. "I need time. Need to figure out if I can live in this world again, if I can handle the danger and the secrets and everything that comes with your name. I'm making changes. Legitimate businesses, clean money, nothing that puts you or Nico at risk. Is that even possible? Can you really walk away from what you were?" "I'm trying. For you. For him. For the family I want us to be." Lucian's expression was raw. "I can't erase my past. Can't pretend I didn't build an empire on things I'm not proud of. But I can choose differently going forward, and I am." Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that he could change, that they could make this work, that the life he was offering was real and not just another beautiful lie. "Show me," she said. "Show me what you're building, the legitimate businesses, the clean future. Let me see it before I make any decisions about moving Nico into it." Over the next 3 months, Lucien did exactly that. He showed her the real estate developments, actual buildings being bought and renovated and sold, nothing hidden or shady. Showed her the charity foundation he was expanding, the children's hospital wing he was funding, the scholarships for kids who looked like Nico and came from neighborhoods where futures were hard to find. Showed her the lawyers he'd hired to clean up his business, the partners he'd cut loose, the transformation he was orchestrating piece by careful piece. And slowly, carefully, Elena started to believe. Nico made the decision for them in the end. It was January, cold and gray in Seattle, when he announced at breakfast that he wanted to live with his dad. "I like it here," he said, matter of fact. "But I like it in LA more. There's sun and a pool, and my room is bigger, and Dad's there." Elena's heart clenched. "You want to leave Seattle? Leave your school, your friends?" "I'll make new friends. And Tyler said he's moving anyway because his dad got a new job. So it's not like I'm leaving anyone important." Nico pushed his cereal around. "Don't you want to live with Dad?" "It's not that simple." "Why not? You said you love him. He loves you. He loves me. We should all live together. That's what families do." Elena looked at her son, this 6-year-old with Lucien. Yen's eyes and her practical nature and a wisdom that came from growing up too fast. "You're right," she said quietly. "That is what families do." She called Lucien that night, after Nico was asleep. "We'll move," she said without preamble. "But I have conditions." "Anything." "I want Nico in a good school, normal school, not some elite place where everyone knows your name. I want him to have a childhood that doesn't revolve around your world." "Done." "I want to work. I'm not going to be some kept woman who sits around your mansion all day. I need purpose." "The foundation needs a director. Someone who understands what it's like to struggle. Someone who cares about the kids we're trying to help. Position's yours if you want it." Elena blinked. You're serious? Completely. I've been looking for the right person for months. Turns out she was in Seattle the whole time. I don't have experience running a foundation. You have experience surviving, raising a child alone, building something from nothing. That's more valuable than any degree. His voice softened. I trust you, Elena. Trust your judgment, your heart, your ability to do this job better than anyone I could hire. What about us? What do we tell people about our relationship? The truth? That you're my wife, that we're rebuilding our marriage, that it's messy and complicated and none of their business. He paused. Unless you don't want to be my wife anymore. I know I haven't earned that right again. I never stopped being your wife, not legally, not in my heart. Elena's throat tightened. But I need you to know that moving back doesn't mean everything's fixed. We still have work to do. Trust to rebuild. Years of damage to sort through. I know, and I'm ready to do the work, for however long it takes. They moved to Los Angeles in March. Nico started at a school where the other kids didn't care that his father was Lucien Vale, where he was just another second grader trying to navigate reading and math and playground politics. Elena took over the foundation, threw herself into building programs for foster kids and scholarship initiatives and everything she wished had existed when she'd been young and struggling. And Lucien kept his promises. Came home for dinner every night, coached Nico's soccer team even though he knew nothing about soccer, and spent the first 3 practices looking vaguely terrified. Took them both on weekend trips where they explored tide pools and museums and all the normal family things Elena had thought they'd never have. It wasn't perfect. They fought sometimes, usually about Lucien working too late, or Elena pushing too hard, or the ways they'd both changed in 6 years, and were still learning each other again. Nico had nightmares where he woke up crying because he thought his dad had left. And it took both of them to calm him down and reassure him this was real. But it was real. Messy and complicated and built from wreckage, but real. The wedding, their second one, the one they chose instead of the one circumstance had forced on them, was small. Just the 3 of them, and Marcus Webb, and a handful of people who'd helped them survive the past 6 years. No elaborate ceremony, no white dress, just Elena in a simple sundress, and Lucien in jeans and Nico between them, holding both their hands. Do you take this woman, the officiant asked Lucien, to be your wife? To love and cherish, in good times and bad, for all the days of your lives? I do. Again. Always. And do you take this man to be your husband? Elena looked at Lucien, at the man who'd searched for her for 6 years, who'd learned to be a father to a son who didn't know him, who was building a legitimate empire from the ashes of a criminal one because he wanted to give them a future worth having. I do. When they kissed, Nico made a gagging sound that had everyone laughing. It was perfect in its imperfection, real in a way their first wedding had never been. That night, after Nico was asleep and the house was quiet, Elena and Lucien sat on their back patio overlooking the city. I've been thinking about Serena, Elena said. Lucien tensed. What about her? I got a letter from her last week. She's in Paris, working at some art gallery. Says she's getting therapy. Says she's sorry. Elena pulled out the letter, unopened. I haven't read it yet. Do you want to? I don't know. Part of me wants to forgive her, to believe people can change, but part of me is still so angry about what she took from us. Both things can be true. Lucien took her hand. You can want to forgive her and still be angry, can hope she's changed and still not want her in your life. What would you do? I'd burn it. But I'm not you. I don't have the kind of heart that wants to see the best in people even after they've proven they're the worst. Elena looked at the letter, at her sister's handwriting on the envelope. Then she stood, walked to the outdoor fireplace, and dropped it in. I choose us, she said, watching it burn. I choose the family we're building. I choose forward instead of back. Lucien joined her, pulled her close. I love you. I love you too, even when it's hard, even when we're still figuring out how to be us again, especially then. They stood there watching the letter turn to ash, 6 years of poison finally burning away. 2 years later, Elena stood in the foundation office looking at the wall of photos, kids they'd helped, families they'd supported, futures they'd made possible. Nico ran in, now 8 and all knees and elbows and questions, clutching a permission slip. Mom, I need you to sign this. Field trip to the Science Museum. Dad said he'd come if you sign it. Did he? Elena took the permission slip, tried not to smile at the crayon drawing of the three of them at the bottom. And what makes you think I'm going to sign it? Because you always do. And because you love science museums. And because if you don't, I'll just forge your signature like Tyler showed me. Nico Alexander Vale, you will not forge my signature. Then sign it for real. Elena signed it, shaking her head. You're too smart for your own good. I get it from you. Nice try. Your dad's the genius. You both are. I'm just the product of superior genetics. Nico grinned, all Lucien's arrogance wrapped in a child's face. Lucien appeared in the doorway, suit jacket over his shoulder, looking tired but content. What did I miss? Mom signed my permission slip and I complimented her intelligence. We're bonding. I see that. Lucien crossed to Elena, kissed her forehead. Ready to go home? Yeah, let me just finish this email. She typed quickly while Lucien and Nico discussed the science museum and whether they'd see real dinosaur bones or just replicas. Overhead, the Foundation's mission statement hung in bold letters. Building futures for those who need them most. It was good work. Important work. The kind that made the years of struggle and pain and loss feel like they'd led somewhere meaningful. Elena hit send on this email, grabbed her bag, and turned to her family. Okay, let's go home. They walked out together into the Los Angeles afternoon. Elena between Lucien and Nico. Three people who'd been torn apart by lies and brought back together by truth. It hadn't been easy. Hadn't been simple. Hadn't been anything like the fairy tale Elena had once imagined when she'd married a man she barely knew and thought love would be enough. But it was real. Scarred and hard-won and built from wreckage, but real. And that was worth more than any fairy tale could ever be. Years later, when Nico was 15 and towered over both his parents and asked about the 6 years his father had missed, Elena and Lucien told him the truth. All of it. The lies Serena had told. The mistakes they'd both made. The time they'd lost and could never get back. Do you ever wish it had been different? Nico asked. That you'd figured it out sooner? That I'd grown up knowing Dad from the start? Every day, Elena admitted. Every single day I wish we'd had those years. Wish your dad had been there for your first word, your first steps, all the moments that made you who you are. But then you wouldn't be who you are, Lucien added. The kid you became in Seattle, with your mom raising you alone, building a life from nothing, that shaped you, made you strong and independent and resilient. Would I trade that to have those years back? I don't know. Nico processed this. So you're saying the bad stuff made me better? I'm saying nothing is simple. The bad stuff was bad. Cost us all something we can't get back. But you came through it strong anyway. That's not because of what Serena did. That's because of who you are, who your mom raised you to be. And now? Now we have everything that matters, Elena said. We have each other. We have truth. We have a future that's ours to build however we want. She pulled her son close, this teenager who was becoming a man, who had Lucien's drive, and her heart, and a strength all his own. The past happened. We survived it, and we're choosing to move forward together. That's all anyone can do. Nico hugged her back. I'm glad you found each other again. Even if it took 6 years, even if the bad lady tried to destroy everything, I'm glad we're a family. Me too, baby. Me too. Elena looked over Nico's shoulder at Lucien, at the man she'd loved and lost and found again, at the life they'd built from lies and wreckage and desperate hope. It wasn't the life she'd imagined at 24 when she'd married a stranger and thought love conquered all. It was better. Because it was earned, fought for, built with honesty and patience and the kind of work that fairy tales never talked about. And in the end, that's what made it real.